because I really didn't think the audience, if I say I had written it about a struggling writer in California, in Hollywood, and here he is bombing around in his convertible with a suntan, but his scripts aren't selling. So what? I mean, at least he has a tan, right? What do you?
And a convertible.
Right, with tomato juice or orange juice. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. So this I set in a very gloomy area of Philadelphia, which is very, very industrial type town, a muscular town.
Hey, yo, Rock. Yo, hey, who doesn't like Rocky Balboa, right? I mean, come on. Yo, Adrian. Yo, Adrian! It's just such a classic, perfectly made movie. The most relatable movie is Rocky. And you saw in that clip I just showed you how Stallone was trying to find a metaphor, which a narrative metaphor for what he was experiencing as a struggling artist in Los Angeles. So the key takeaway that I get from Rocky is the way that Stallone incorporated his own life, his own authentic emotions, and his own experiences into this, like I said before, narrative metaphor. Now, a narrative metaphor is something that Paul Schrader, the writer of Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, the director of First Reformed, and many other amazing movies, says it's a kind of a phrase that Paul Schrader coined.
Now, what is a metaphor? A metaphor is the stand-in. It is not the problem itself. So, the metaphor for a lonely boy is not a lonely boy. The metaphor for an unattractive girl is not an unattractive girl. And great stories throughout history have had great metaphors.
I'll link the lecture below. I recommend any writer and filmmaker just take a look at this lecture. It's incredibly valuable. I've learned so much from it. But back to Stallone and the visual metaphor or narrative metaphor of his own life. See, Stallone took his struggles as a screenwriter, a struggling actor and filmmaker in Los Angeles, and he said, I don't think just making a direct representation of my life is going to be the most productive, the most entertaining and relatable way to tell my emotional narrative. And I think the key for all of us as writers is to look at our lives and look at what we're experiencing, and instead of taking an exact metaphor from our life, which is easy to do, we should tell my emotional narrative. It's such an authentic movie. And I have just a few little details that Stallone incorporated that I just think are perfect. The turtles in Rocky's apartment. And, they're brought up throughout the script. He brings Adrian there and he's like, hey, yo, these are my turtles. And she's like, oh, I sold them to you. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then Mickey comes in, and I think this line was ad-libbed because it wasn't in the draft of the script I read, but Rocky is showing him the turtles, and Mickey's like, what are these? And Rocky says, oh yeah, the domestic turtles. And Mickey's like, they make good soup. Which just the turtles are their own little character, and they're just they fit within the world of Rocky. Another detail are the singers outside on the street, in front of the fire. There's the vernacular of Rocky. Hey, yo, and the way he talks. And, Stallone was taking a lot of his own vernacular from where he grew up and incorporating it into the script. And, of course, the vernacular of Paulie and of Gazzo and Adrian. Everyone has their authentic way of speaking, and it's within the dialogue of the script. It's not just brought in by the actors. So that's really something to think about. How do people around you speak and your own experiences, and how can you incorporate that into your script? And the last detail is Butt Kiss the dog, right? That dog kind of comes, it's amazing how therapeutic writing can be, because Stallone famously had to sell his dog because he was so poor he couldn't make rent. So he had to sell his dog to make rent on his apartment. And the dog, I don't know if it had the same name. It may have had the same name as the dog in the movie. But in Rocky, it's the reverse. Adrian brings the dog to him. He's like, hey, yo, butt kiss. And it's like, you can see how he's taking these moments, these details from his life, and incorporating them. But you know, I think that's pretty common, right? Incorporating a detail, I think that's kind of obvious. What may not be as obvious, just in life in general, is to incorporate your own emotional state as a person into the story that you're creating. Why isn't that obvious? Well, a lot of people aren't even in tune with where they are emotionally, and they're running from it. They may be running from the fact that, you know, their marriage is falling apart, or their family is falling apart, or just they're dissatisfied with their life, or they're dissatisfied with their own choices. A lot of people are running from the things that are hurting them, and they don't want to face them. Well, we all know that facing your fears, facing your weaknesses is the greatest way to grow. And that's one of the reasons I've learned to love writing and filmmaking, is because I've forced myself to face the darkest parts of myself. And I think Paul Schrader's point on that is brilliant. So going back all the way to Paul Schrader's point, take the emotional state that you're in and find a metaphor to carry it out. And Rocky is exactly that. Stallone was a struggling artist. And what is a better metaphor than someone fighting, literally fighting their way into the chance of a lifetime? That story is something everyone can relate to, even though it's so specific. It's such a specific story, using specific details of a specific person's life from a specific time period, well in the past now. And yet that story resonates. And I think, well, I know it's because of the emotional resonance that Stallone tapped into. So when you write your story, when you make your film, find the emotional resonance that you are experiencing. Find that emotion. That's what art is. It comes from the heart. It's a beautiful expression of where you are, where your soul is. Find that thing, understand it, think about it, communicate it through your script. And not only will it be therapeutic and healing, but it will create probably the best thing you've ever written. And I'm working on that right now with my own stories. And I'm just going to finish it off with one last clip from Stallone.
It's about boxing, of course, but it is about more than that, is it?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
it about your own struggle, basically?
What it is I took my particular plight, which isn't unique. It's every artist or any man who has ever wanted to do something, man or woman, meaning, that's wanted to do something that has not been able to do it because of the inability to get a break. The opportunity has never knocked on their door, for example. So I said, geez, if I could take my plight as an actor and put him into a real underdog, very physical, that being a boxer, and tell my story, like I couldn't get an agent and he couldn't get a manager, and I had no love in my life at the time, and he didn't either, and so on and so forth.
I love how the interviewer says in that clip, you incorporated your own struggle. And I think that sums it up. What is your struggle? What are you experiencing right now that you are struggling with? What is the problem, as Paul Schrader puts it, what's the problem you're facing? The unique problem. Ask yourself that. Think about it. I spent almost 3 weeks thinking about it until I went, oh, I know what to write about. It took me 3 weeks. I thought about it on my drive to work and back. And then on my free time, I would think, what is my problem? And I wrote that on a little Post-it note and put it in my wallet. And I'd see it every once in a while and go, oh, what is my problem? What am I going through? What is the problem I'm facing? And then you take that problem, that emotional struggle, that physical struggle, whatever it may be, and then you find a narrative metaphor. The metaphor may be pretty much an exact representation of what you're going through. Or it may be a fantastical out there idea like, Howl's Moving Castle or Pinocchio. I don't know, fantasy. That may be where you find a way to express that metaphor. But look for it, incorporate it, make it authentic, and don't be afraid to put it out there. And so, that's just something I'm telling myself, but I hope that helped. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you can, of course, follow this channel. And my goal for this next year is to put out as much content as possible. So I hope that you can join me in this journey, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace.